Thank you so much. I must thank Alex and Arvind for inviting me here. So, good morning / afternoon, everyone. Sunday mornings are never easy. Wasn't easy for me, for sure. I did it just for him. So, and it's a tough act to follow with Nishant and Jane having gone before me. There's a fantastic stories, and I must try the brownies. So wherever, I don't think I got my hands on any of the free brownies there, but I'm going to expect you to send me some, at least after this performance. So, yes, when Arvind told me about the masterclass, he said this was the convergence of people who think differently and do things differently. And if anything, I would say it defines my story. So more than a structured, this is the lessons I have to inspire you with, I will just share my story with you and take you on a path that started a very, very long time ago for me. So let's go back in time. Let's go back to 2000. And that was, now I have to give away numbers. I was 19 at the time, so stop counting, please. But it was a charmed life. I actually went. I grew up most of my life in Chennai. I went to school here in the area, Sisha, right close by to, obviously, I think stone's throw. And I just finished my 12th grade and all of that, and I had gone to the UK to study. I had very, very supportive parents, an extremely supportive family, and very education oriented. So I was one of those over-enthusiastic, do everything kind of kids, okay, study, sports, blah, blah, made the most of all my time. And I finished a year in the UK, in Manchester, and at that time I had done my foundation course in economics and political science, and then a one-year course in textiles, because my family is actually in the retail business, as Indian Terrain was mentioned before, but I'll come to that many years later. So I was back in Chennai on a holiday from the UK, and I had a chat with my dad, and he said, you know, do you want to consider pursuing your undergraduate in the US? And I was one of those. I actually graduated early, so I had a whole bunch of time. And at that time, and I think you still do, for any of you who are familiar with going to school in the United States, you have to do your SATs. Big pain in the butt. So it's, and it required a lot of studying, because you know the ISC system and stuff, you're taught how to mug here, you need to actually think. So I needed to make a huge attitude adjustment. And so I took, so we decided not to go back to the UK, and my dad was like, okay, let's, as long as you apply to the top 10 schools, I'll pay for it. Otherwise you're on your own. But that's generally his attitude. So it's, and it served me well, I'll tell you. So I was studying for the SAT, and I found a tutor here, and I was quite conscientious. My mom is here, I think she may fake agree to that, but yes, I was pretty conscientious at the time. So I remember, and I take you back to that particular day, because so much of the story goes back to who I was then and what happened after. So on March 16th, are we right? So March 16th, 2002, my mom had come up with an idea. My grandma, my maternal grandma at the time, lived in Bangalore. So she was like, you know, you're studying too hard, come with me on this trip and stuff. I thought this is a terrible idea. Another 5:30 in the morning, she's like, you, this is 10 now, 5:30 in the morning, I hate mornings, clearly not a morning person. So, and it was a weekend. So I was like, okay, fine, let's go. No problem. This was 2002, so there were no airbags at the time. There were just seatbelts. So we had, and the highway between Chennai and Bangalore at the time was new. So which gives like everybody the inspiration to speed, you know, just clip it. The night before, I even remember what I was wearing on that day. I was wearing these obnoxious blue sunglasses, and even they have a role to play as I continue in the story. So my mom was like, okay, you can sit in front, be the DJ. Who does that? But still, I was like, I fell for the idea. I said, okay, let me sit in front and go to sleep, you know, while we make it to Bangalore. And I remember very clearly, we had reached Ranipet. My mum was in the backseat because she had work, and one of her colleagues was also behind me, and my driver was driving. So I think, I remember after Ranipet, I thought he was going a little fast, but you know, I was just kind of like, okay, we'll get to Bangalore faster, whatever, you know, that kind of thing. And what happened next, I would say, changed my life completely, which is kind of why I guess I'm here today, or even the fact that I'm here today itself is kind of a big thing. So my driver, I guess, was going at about 100, and this was a Honda City, which pretty much crumples like tissue paper if you hit anything. So it's, you know the truth. So it's so what happened was he ran one of the intersections without stopping, and I was asleep wearing sunglasses at the time. So he tried to run it, and without seeing a truck turn in, he realized at the last minute one of those Ashok Leyland trucks had turned into, like, straight onto our way. And I think he had about 10 to 15 meters to brake, and how I know this is apparently the tire marks were like burnt into the road when he tried to do that. And as human instinct would have it, he turned the car to get out of the line of impact, which put me straight in front. So what happened is we hit it at that speed, the car crumpled, and I, lip locked the truck, like literally. And I know it's not funny, but that's just kind of how it went. And what happened after that, of course, I was not awake, and neither was my mom or the other person who was in the car, because my body had blocked the gentleman behind me and actually saved him from further destruction. And my driver had actually only broken his jaw, and that was something that I later wondered about. I'm just like, how is it easy for some people? But it's like, I think everything does happen for a reason. So what happened after that was my dad was actually not in the country at the time. So somebody paged him. He was traveling in Malaysia or something, and somebody paged him in the airport and said, you need to come home now. And when he came back, no one really told him what had happened, because you don't want him to have some kind of issue before seeing what had happened. And somebody, basically a group of people had taken us to the closest hospital, which was CMC Vellore. Now that was I guess lucky at the time in a way, because it is a really good hospital. And at that point, that is when my mother and I parted ways. I would say for 2 years. We didn't see each other for 2 years after that, and I'll tell you why. So I was taken away to a different ICU, and she was taken to an orthopedic ICU. And all I remember after that is my dad's voice telling me again and again, this is your name, this is the date, this is your age, this is what's happened. And I would not remember the same thing the next day. He would do it again and again and again. And what was the hardest was that I couldn't see anything. I was blind. 100%. 100% blind. And what CMC Vellore actually could not do, they couldn't do anything for me. I had close to 400 plus skull fractures. These weren't even bones that were broken. This is like powder. So there was nothing left. They just they stitched up what basically they could. We as a family, my dad tells me to this day, he shut down the hospital. Covered it with our people, tried to keep it as infection free, because I was bleeding from the brain. I was bleeding from the brain, I was completely blind, I couldn't smell. They said I would not wake up. So, and this is how, and I faded in and out at the time. And it's so funny because a day before that, the day before all of this happened, I had so many dreams. I mean, I was 19. That's when you're developing your personality. That's when you're developing your sense of identity, your dreams, your future. I mean, who are we as people? We only start at that point. So my start was shaky and fractured, to say the least. So what happened was, my dad actually is a huge big anchor and a driving force through this experience, because he had to find a way out. I think it was him who initially, in his mind, and which led me to have the strength to say, this is not going to be my reality. I'm not going to live like this. First of all, I'm going to live. So anybody who says no, can take a pound expletive. And it was just, we didn't have any answers. But, so he went from, I mean, I can't imagine what he went through to keep it together, to be honest, because both the women in his life were gone, as far as I was concerned. And I think, and if my mother had a story to tell, which would be a different one, she would tell you what she experienced in terms of being separated from her child. So what happened was, I was moved to Chennai, and they had to move me without moving my head. And during the time that I was in CMC Vellore, they had to also clip my hands down because I didn't know what had happened. I was clawing away at my face. So I just needed to, I was trying to get out of the situation, but there was no sense. There was no sense of what, and nobody was telling me anything besides my name and my age and the date and what had happened, and I was clearly not remembering much. So the next step, and I'd say the next part of the journey, which I'm about to tell you, is what me and my father took alone, together, both flying blind in multiple ways. Because he had called all over the world to see who could do this kind of craniofacial reconstructive surgery that required restoration of the eyesight, restoration of the nerves, restoration of the brain, restoration of, and right now I have not even touched the topic of what I used to look like, because none of you know what that is. And I remember, but I try not to focus on that. Because those are the things that you start having to let go of. Okay? When something like this happens, everything changes. It's a question of, am I going to live through this? Am I going to take what is given to me and adjust to that and still become a better version of Anjali? Or am I going to be angry with God? You can't go with the latter at all. So what happened was, my father found 2 hospitals, one in Germany, one in Chicago. Germany, obviously, because they have the autobahns there, and lots of people get into these kind of car crashes, but we don't speak German. So it seemed like the better idea was to go to Chicago. So they just airlifted me without moving anything and just prayed that I would get there and somehow tried to believe that I would find a life again. What they said in India, the two words that I despise and my mother hates even more is Paravale and Pavam. Okay, Paravale ella seriyaidum. How is that possible? People tell you that all the time, even my grandparents. I'm not happy with them for that reason. Because they'll be like, yeah, it will become okay. I'm like, are you serious? It's not possible. And Pavam is the next option. Because then it's like they wanted to stick you in a wheelchair. I'm sure my parents would have, got nurses round the clock, and for me to have felt sorry for myself and lived out the rest of my days and probably not wanted to live after that. But it was, at least I had her on my side in terms of